Welcome to the debate. Imagine standing in the control center of like a high-speed rail network. Through the glass, you watch these massive, incredibly powerful trains just hurtling down the tracks at unprecedented speeds. I mean, they are efficient, relentless, and entirely automated. But then you look closely at the control room itself. The chairs are empty.
Yeah.
The monitors are completely dark. There are no dispatchers reading weather reports. There are no track switchers adjusting for congestion, no maintenance crews checking the structural integrity of the rails. The trains are just running blind at 300 miles an hour.
Right. And it's really only a matter of time before they hit a curve they just weren't programmed for.
Exactly. A catastrophic derailment isn't just a possibility in that scenario, right? It's an inevitability. And today, we are basically staring down the barrel of automated enterprise finance. We're entering an era that's going to be dominated by intelligent AI agents. Systems that can execute financial processes, reconcile accounts, and file compliance reports continuously and at a massive scale. But the source material we are examining today raises a really critical alarm about what they call the agent governance gap. So, the central question we are debating is this. In preparing an organization for AI agents, what is the primary prerequisite for success? I argue that the ultimate constraint on AI value is human governance. Organizations must proactively build a specialized human governance layer, really redefining their human workforce before these agents go live. Or else, AI deployment just becomes a massive liability.
But I look at it from the foundation up. Staffing that control room with brilliant dispatchers is utterly useless if the tracks themselves are built on sand. My perspective is that focusing so heavily on human organizational redesign is, well, it's a secondary concern. First, you have to solve the foundational mechanical limitations of process clarity and data infrastructure. Because without those underlying architectures firmly in place, even the absolute most skilled human governance teams are just going to fail.
Well, I think we need to look at what deploying an autonomous agent actually means in high-stakes domains, like compliance or treasury. It's not just faster software. When you deploy an AI agent without a highly sophisticated human layer to govern it, you aren't achieving automation. You are accumulating risk at machine speed.
Risk accumulation at machine speed. That's a great soundbite, I'll give you that. But aren't you kind of ignoring the fail-safes built into modern financial systems?
The fail-safes are exactly what the agents are supposed to navigate. Think about it. A compliance agent makes continuous decisions at scale. If it applies, say, an outdated tax rule, it doesn't just make one isolated mistake that a manager casually catches on a Friday afternoon.
Sure.
It submits thousands of incorrect declarations to regulatory authorities in an hour. These agents operate inside regulatory environments that are constantly shifting. They require deliberate human capability to direct them, monitor them, and continuously improve them. That is why we absolutely must build specialized roles, specifically things like agent architects and compliance intelligence officers, before agents are deployed at scale. You simply cannot build a control room after the train has left the station.
But you are trying to govern the ungovernable. Yes, human oversight matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. But it provides a really dangerous illusion of control if the underlying process and data foundations are broken. Let's look closely at the realities of modern enterprise finance. Countless processes rely heavily on tacit, undocumented human knowledge.
Okay, but
No, think about it. Bob from accounting just knows how to handle a specific vendor's quirky invoices because he's done it for 10 years. He has a sticky note on his monitor. You cannot have an agent architect govern a process that can't even be translated into machine logic yet. And if you deploy a highly skilled human governance team over a fractured data foundation, you just get highly paid professionals continuously trying to manage agents that are operating on entirely unreliable data.
okay, so if the data is perfect, why do we even need humans? Let's talk about the nature of the systems themselves. AI agents do not self-correct in the way humans do. A human accountant noticing a new international tariff will pause, ask a question, and adjust their workflow. An agent applies defined logic blindly. When the situation changes, the agent's performance degrades. It drifts.
Right. Agent drift.
Exactly. Think of agent drift like a GPS navigating a city where the street signs change every single night. The AI follows the optimal route based on old maps, completely unaware that a new one-way street, say a new tax law in Germany, was just instituted. It drives you right into oncoming traffic. The agents are the cars, but the human governance team is the crew updating the map. Data quality alone doesn't tell you the tax law changed yesterday. Only a human can do that.
Well, that GPS analogy works perfectly if the only problem is the environment changing around the car. But let's look at the root cause of what actually breaks these systems in practice. What if the GPS is pulling data from 3 conflicting maps simultaneously? If the physical tracks are broken, the track switcher's awareness doesn't matter. An agent performance manager can't adequately diagnose a logic gap if the data foundations themselves are fundamentally flawed. Quote the material directly. Agent deployment on poor data foundations produces unreliable agents. If your canonical data model is a mess, how does the governance team know if the agent is applying the wrong tax logic or if it's simply pulling from a duplicated, unsynchronized database?
Hold on, let's unpack that term for a second, because that gets right to the heart of the technical versus human debate. When you say canonical data model,
Right, so think of a canonical data model as a universal translator for the enterprise. In a global company, the French subsidiary might log revenue in one system using euros and a really specific regional accounting code. The US branch logs it in dollars with a completely different format in another legacy system. The canonical data model translates all of that scattered, messy information into one standardized, universally understood language. If you don't have that universal translator in place, the AI agent gets profoundly confused. Is it looking at dollars or euros? Is this gross revenue or net?
Right, so it's garbage in, garbage out.
It's much worse than that. It's high-speed garbage processing. Add in the data orchestration layer, which is essentially the plumbing that moves that translated data around, and your clean core ERP, which is basically your central nervous system stripped of messy, localized custom code. If that plumbing is leaking and the nervous system is compromised, the agent's output degrades immediately. Your human governance team will spend all their time chasing phantom logic errors, thinking the AI is broken, when the real issue is that the underlying data architecture is a disaster. You are asking humans to govern noise.
right, governing noise is a fair warning. I acknowledge that bad data produces bad outcomes, but even with a perfect universal translator and flawless plumbing, data and rules eventually run out. That's where the human layer proves it's the ultimate arbiter of success. Let's look at the exception intelligence specialist. There's a really fascinating paradox of automation here. In an agent-augmented finance function, the volume of human work drops, but the complexity skyrockets.
Right, because the machines take all the easy stuff.
Exactly. The agents filter out all the routine, rule-based transactions. What's left in the human queue? The highly complex, ambiguous, regulatory gray areas. Let's walk through a scenario. Imagine a complex intercompany tariff dispute. The AI flags a transaction between a manufacturing subsidiary in Brazil and a parent company in Ireland. The Brazilian tax authority has just issued a vague, preliminary ruling on digital service taxes that heavily conflicts with the Irish transfer pricing agreements.
Which happens all the time.
Right. And there is no historical data for this. There is no precedent. A universal translator doesn't help you here because the languages, the actual legal frameworks, are genuinely in conflict.
And the AI throws its hands up.
Exactly. It kicks it to an exception queue. This proves that human work shifts to a level of complexity requiring deep domain expertise without the safety net of precedent. The exception intelligence specialist must step in precisely where the data and the rules end, interpret the ambiguity, negotiate the internal settlement, and then, crucially, feed that new understanding back into the system so the AI can handle it next time.
Okay, I see the value in resolving the exception. It makes perfect sense that if machines handle the routine, humans handle the edge cases. But the bottleneck lies in that last step you mentioned, feeding it back into the system. That brings us to the role that precedes all of this, the agent architect. This is the person who decides which processes go to agents, designs the decision logic, and manages how agents interact with the enterprise systems.
Yes, the architects who build the cognitive pathways for the AI.
Right. But think about what that role actually demands. It requires a deep combination of financial domain expertise, like knowing the absolute intricacies of tax logic and compliance, and a highly technical understanding of systems design and machine logic. Let's be rigorously honest here. That combination is exceedingly rare. Can we genuinely expect a traditional tax specialist who has spent 20 years deep in tax code to suddenly adopt profound systems thinking and architect an automated compliance ecosystem? Are we just changing their title and sending them to a 3-day seminar? You are building an entire strategic imperative around a unicorn role that the labor market simply cannot currently supply.
Well, if I'm a CFO listening to this, I'm probably thinking exactly what you just said. You want me to take my best tax experts and turn them into IT architects. That sounds like a disaster. How do you actually pull that off? But I would argue it's not about turning them into software engineers. It's about a fundamental shift in orientation.
A shift in orientation. What does that actually mean in practice, though?
It means changing the question they ask every morning. Right now, a tax specialist asks, how do I execute this tax filing process? We need them to ask, how do I design a system that executes this tax filing process reliably? You don't need a unicorn. You need a structured, multi-year organizational development investment. You take the people with irreplaceable domain expertise because you cannot engineer a nuanced understanding of international tax law overnight, and you teach them the analytical frameworks of agent logic.
They just intuitively know how to do into machine logic.
By breaking down their own intuition. When a tax expert looks at an invoice and says, oh, this needs special VAT treatment, they aren't using magic, right? They are running a mental decision tree. Is it from this region? Is it over this amount? Does it involve this type of good? The agent architect's job is to extract that mental decision tree and make it explicit. They use process mapping. They interview the edge case workers. If we wait until the agents are live to figure out who can do this extraction and governance, we expose the enterprise to massive, massive risk.
But over-investing in a psychological shift for your workforce to govern systems that do not yet exist is equally dangerous. You are asking an organization to build a highly theoretical capability in a total vacuum. Let's look at the actual infrastructure of governance. Things like monitoring systems, audit logging mechanisms, exception escalation paths, and automated performance metrics. These are structural mechanical guardrails.
Like the plumbing of governance.
Exactly. And building those mechanical systems is a far more reliable precursor to success than trying to rewire the brains of your entire tax department. If you build robust audit logging first, you create a controlled environment. When the agent makes a decision, the system automatically logs exactly which data points it looked at, what logic it applied, and what confidence interval it had. With that infrastructure in place, the humans can actually learn how to govern after the agents are turned on, because they have a clear diagnostic dashboard of what the machine is doing. If you try to teach governance without those dashboards in place, you are just teaching theory. Infrastructure forces clarity. Human capability naturally follows the infrastructure.
But an audit log without human intelligence to interpret it is just an alarm bell ringing in an empty room. Let's bring in another vital capability from the material, the Compliance Intelligence Officer. This role shifts from executing compliance to gathering intelligence. They manage the strategic relationship with regulators and monitor the horizon for developments that require logic updates.
Okay, but again, how does that work in reality compared to mechanical rules?
Let's say a federal tax authority issues a sweeping 200-page ruling on the taxation of cryptocurrency assets. An audit log cannot read that ruling and translate it into a logic specification for an AI agent. A canonical data model doesn't know what a new cryptocurrency regulation means. Only a human with deep regulatory foresight can digest that text, anticipate the operational impact on the business, and rewrite the parameters for the agents before the ruling takes effect. If you build the mechanical infrastructure first, but lack the compliance intelligence officer to interpret the horizon, your agents will continue executing perfectly according to their original, now illegal parameters. The infrastructure will show green lights right up until the exact moment you are hit with a massive compliance fine.
Well, that is assuming the process was clearly defined enough to be coded legally in the first place. You're talking about updating the logic for new regulations. Let's go back to the reality of the baseline. Processes dependent on tacit human knowledge that have never been documented are not agent-ready. The logic required to specify them hasn't been made explicit. You cannot have a compliance intelligence officer update the logic of a system if the original logic was just, as I said earlier, Bob from accounting. Until you force the organization to painstakingly map, clarify, and digitize its processes, moving that tacit knowledge into explicit process architecture, your human governance team is standing on a bridge to nowhere. They have literally nothing to govern.
I don't disagree that process clarity is essential, but who do you think maps that tacit knowledge into explicit logic? It's the agent architect. You need the human capability to even conduct a readiness assessment accurately. This is why the human layer must come first. Average AI agents, governed by a highly capable human team, will continuously improve. The humans will spot the errors, refine the logic, and optimize the parameters. But great AI agents with underdeveloped human governance will inevitably drift into material failures. By building the human team first, the architects, the performance managers, the exception specialists, you ensure that the AI will be directed safely and continuously improved. The best AI agents will be built and governed by the best humans. Build the humans first, and the agents will follow.
And I maintain that while highly skilled human governance is absolutely the destination, rigorous process clarity and robust data architecture are the road that gets you there. You cannot govern an agent whose logic is fundamentally based on ambiguous, undocumented human habits. You cannot ask an agent performance manager to diagnose a logic gap if their decisions rely on a fractured data orchestration layer. The mechanical guardrails, the universal translators of the data models, the clean central nervous system of the ERP, these must be established to give the human governance team a fighting chance. Otherwise, you are just masking infrastructural rot with very expensive human oversight.
Well, while we clearly approach the sequencing of this challenge from different angles, I think we both find strong convergence on the starkest warning here. Deploying intelligent agents without rigorous pre-deployment readiness creates immense organizational risk.
Exactly. Whether an organization focuses heavily on the human capability vector or the structural data vector, simply turning on AI agents and hoping for the best is not transformation. It's an abdication of fiduciary responsibility. A readiness assessment is not a rubber stamp to say you are ready, because most organizations honestly aren't. It's a mirror to show you exactly where your structural or human deficits are right now.
Designing the finance function of the next decade is incredibly complex. It requires an honest look at where your organization stands today. We encourage you to look at your own operations. Are your tracks built on solid ground? Is your control room fully staffed? You have to decide which readiness vector must take priority in your own enterprise. But whatever you decide, remember the control room. The trains are arriving, they're moving faster than anything we've ever seen, and someone has to be ready to switch the tracks.